On the 23rd of August 2021, Babita Deokaran was returning home after dropping her daughter off at school, when a vehicle pulled alongside her vehicle and fired multiple shots after she had parked in front of her house in Johannesburg South, resulting in her death. At the time of her death, Deokaran was the acting chief financial officer at the Gauteng Provincial Government Department of Health, and her role as whistleblower is what would get her assassinated. It was reported in the media that her death was linked to a corrupt COVID-19 PPE procurement scandal to the value of 332 million rand within the Gauteng Provincial Department of Health. An official from the South African Special Investigating Unit confirmed that Deokaran was a key witness in the investigation to expose a syndicate set up to benefit from state corruption. Deokaran had been on special leave for more than a year prior to her death, whilst the investigation was underway. 3 weeks before she was killed, she reported a flood of suspicious transactions out of Tembisa Hospital and immediately moved to stop payments and launch an investigation into hundreds of companies she worried were illegitimate. Unbeknownst to her, she had found the first signs of a mammoth extraction network which had tapped into the hospital's budget. Money meant for the sick and dying of Tembisa Hospital was stolen. Gauteng Department of Health boss Lerato Madio and Tembisa Hospital CEO Ashley Matunzi signed off on medical supply contracts with grossly inflated prices, overlooking a litany of discrepancies, including forged documents. In one instance, the price of surgical drapes was gouged by nearly 2,000%. In April 2023, the pair were each charged with misconduct during internal disciplinary action arising from 13 transactions they approved, among more than 1,000 dubious payments flagged by Provincial Financial Manager Babita Deokaran before her murder. The new evidence, which underpins misconduct allegations, have been filed in the disciplinary inquiry. This trove of bid documents, quotes, and purchase orders reveal how easily supply chain management prescripts were flouted and bypassed, and how prices soared. The contracts were awarded to companies which form part of complex syndicates, first exposed by News 24, that extracted more than 1 billion rand from Tembisa Hospital, according to a preliminary report filed by the Special Investigating Unit, SIU, in December 2022. A comparison of prices paid by Tembisa Hospital against a universal private sector benchmark revealed that the state hospital, which struggles with overcrowding and staff shortages, was paying a premium for everything from surgical implements to frozen chicken. For 13 tenders, Tembisa Hospital paid 5.6 million rand. Had they used competitive pricing from the private sector, they would have paid less than half of that. More jarring is that these benchmark prices are higher than those available to the hospital through transversal government contracts. In May of 2021, Tembisa CEO Matunzi authorized the purchase of 100 surgical drapes for 475,000 rand from a company called Olimocraft, and in June the payment was approved by Madio. This equates to 4,750 rand per drape that, if purchased by a private hospital, would cost less than 240 rand each. On the same day, Olimocraft also landed a contract for the supply of gauze eye sponges used in ophthalmic surgeries with a price tag of 9,100 rand per unit. This represents a more than 200% markup in price, with the same product available for approximately 3,000 rand. When Tembisa Hospital went shopping for sutures, a company called Prelabu bested 2 others and landed a 485,200 rand purchase order, one of 27 individual deals worth 14 million rand. For the sutures, Prelabu gouged prices by 300% compared to what was available in the private sector. Prelabu is a shell company. Its registered address is a vacant shop in Nigel, east of Johannesburg, and the landlord has no knowledge of the company or its owners. Olimocraft is controlled by Rudolf Mazibuko, the patriarch of a medical supply dynasty that landed contracts worth 250 million rand in 2 years. Mazibuko, as well as his brother, son, and now deceased wife, directed 17 companies which were in business with the facility. In respect of the splurge on surgical drapes, eye sponges and sutures, as with all the deals, CEO Matunzi was charged with failing in his fiduciary duty by not rejecting the bid. The bid should have been disqualified, not only for the massive price inflation, but also because bidding documents were incomplete. Madio was accused of an oversight failure and for failing to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Matunzi, as CEO and final signatory on the purchases, was not the only person to miss obvious discrepancies in the paperwork for each of the 13 purchases for which he has been charged. Purchase order documents that he signed would have first passed the quotation adjudication committee, supposed to be a check and balance against fraud and irregular expenditure made up of as many as 5 hospital staffers. They too either missed or ignored serious anomalies in the paperwork that should have seen bidders disqualified. In their preliminary report, the SIU held that 11 hospital officials should be departmentally charged in connection with these 13 contracts. 1 retired and 4 resigned before they could be charged. As of January 2023, 6 officials were still in their posts, some in the procurement section. The companies that scored the contracts for which Madio and Matunzi have been charged provide a glimpse of key actors and extraction syndicates that operated through Tembisa Hospital's Supply Chain Management Office. Chief among them is front company kingpin Stefan Govindraju, who controls an empire of more than 50 businesses which, despite using fake addresses and existing only on paper, scored 440 million rand in trade from the embattled hospital. At the time, Prelebu won the contract to supply overpriced sutures. Govindraju's relative, Meshan Govinda, was its sole director. Of the 13 contracts, 4 were awarded to businesses Govindraju now controls. There were 17 discrepancies in the bid documents that should have seen them disqualified. Matunzi and Madio also approved a payment for Magnolia Trading Enterprise, whose loan director is Tembisa tender Don Hangwani Morgan Maumela, nephew to President Cyril Ramaphosa from a previous marriage. Maumela and his cousin Aluwani, through 12 entities they control, have been paid 380 million rand by the Gauteng Department of Health as suppliers of various state hospitals. More than 93% of their treasure came from Tembisa. 3 companies with secret ties to front company kingpin, Stefan Govindraju, bid against one another for a lucrative Tembisa hospital deal, the tainted contract now linked to a 440 million rand tender extraction syndicate. This deal saw Tembisa Hospital pay 300% more than they should have for sutures, News 24 can reveal. In another, a company linked to Govindraju submitted forged documents which allowed them to win a supply contract for ventilator parts worth 1,000 rand. These dubious transactions are among thousands of payments flagged by Babita Deokaran just weeks before she was assassinated outside her home. Outwardly, these suppliers have no connection to one another. In reality, they were run by proxy directors with links Govindraju, whose empire of nearly 60 medical supply firms banked nearly 500 million rand from the Gauteng Health Department in just 2 years. In January of 2022, Tembisa Hospital supply chain management officials contacted 3 companies to quote on a contract to provide sutures. These companies were Prelebu, Samoplex, and Etnarin Corp. An online search reveals that none have official websites or social media pages with no discernible track record in the medical supply industry. To supply these sutures, the companies needed licenses from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAHPRA. None held these licenses. The 3 companies provided quotes for the bid valued as follows. 4 members of the bid vetting committee approved the awarding of the deal to Prelebu, and this was eventually signed off by Matunzi. The award was made to Prelebu in spite of serious defects in the paperwork submitted, including company documents were not submitted, a tax clearance certificate had expired, director details on the bid documents were incorrect, and the BBB certificate did not align with the company's director. For this contract, Prelebu's prices, while the cheapest of the 3, were still way above an industry standard. Of concern is that 3 independent entities all gouged their prices, pointing to possible cover quoting and collusion. Doubt over the independence of the companies is called into question when all have tangible links to Govindraju. Of the 13 contracts signed off by Madio and Matunzi, for which they both faced dismissal for financial misconduct, 4 were awarded to companies Govindraju now controls. There were a total of 17 discrepancies in the bid documents that should have seen them disqualified. An examination of documents, and comparing them to those of rival bidders, reveals similarities in handwriting, raising the possibility that they were all filled out by the same person. Another company called Rogue Palm, also controlled by Govindraju, scored a 492,000 Rand contract for the supply of irrigation sets. This is a set of instruments used during surgery to keep the site of surgery clean using a sterile solution. A certificate from the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, submitted with the bid, lists Linda Ntuli as the sole director of Rogue Palm. The certificate is dated the 15th of May 2020. According to the CIPC database, this certificate was valid at the time. However, Ntuli resigned as a director 24 hours later. The bid declaration documents submitted to Tembisa Hospital bore Ntuli's signature as director nearly a full year after his resignation. In September 2022, 3 months after News 24 exposed Shell company directors, 12 people from sound technicians to bank tellers who directed a mammoth latticework of medical supply companies all resigned their directorships. In concert, and in the space of 48 hours, Govindraju was appointed in their stead, according to records obtained. This coordination, which would have required a submission of documents and changes to the CIPC's online portal in unison, raises questions over when Govindraju began holding an interest in the companies, and whether the directors acted for his benefit. The murder of Babita Deokaran represents a profound failure of the South African government to protect those who risk their lives exposing corruption. As a senior official in the Gauteng Department of Health, Deokaran bravely reported irregularities in the PPE procurement scandal, only to be silenced by assassins. The lack of adequate security for whistleblowers like her shows the government's neglect in safeguarding individuals vital to upholding integrity. While leaders promised action, corruption continues to flourish. Long live Babita Deokaran. Her courage will forever be a beacon of truth.